everyone, welcome to Let's Talk. I'm John, and today we're here to talk about Ouija, the 2014 supernatural horror film. We're also here to talk about its new 4K Blu-ray that just came out from Scream Factory. But before we dive into all that, if you are a fan of 4K Blu-ray reviews, movie reviews, some tech and game reviews, nothing helps out the channel more than by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. So Ouija is a 2014 film directed by Stiles White in his directorial debut, and to this date that is actually the only film that he's ever directed. He worked on a bunch of special effects for some big movies such as The Lost World of Jurassic Park. And Stiles White and his wife, Juliet Snow, actually wrote this film, and this film is actually produced by Michael Bay.
Those aren't ideas, those are special effects! I don't understand the difference. I know you don't.
And Jason Blum, amongst a few other people. So at the time, I remember when this film came out, there was a lot of excitement about this movie. The trailer actually looked pretty good. I was excited to see it in 2014, then the reviews started pouring in, and they ripped this movie to shreds. To this date, this still only has a 6% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 24% audience score. So when they announced that Scream Factory was bringing this to 4K, I was pretty skeptical. I'd never heard anyone being a fan of this movie who was asking for this to come to 4K. I actually would have thought that they would have brought the prequel, the Mike Flanagan directed prequel that many people love, including myself, that would have been brought to 4K. But no, they decided to bring the original to 4K because this is a Universal Pictures film. This only had one Blu-ray release and that was just from Universal, and never had a 4K release like this before or anything like that. So maybe they just wanted to upgrade to the format. But having Scream Factory actually do a brand new transfer of this, it opened up my eyes to the point where it's like, okay, I guess I'm going to have to check this one out once and for all, because my plan was to avoid this film at all costs for the rest of my life because I had heard how awful it was. But I grabbed this 4K, I popped it in my 4K player last night, and let me just tell you, it's definitely a bad movie. I didn't enjoy this film at all. And it's pretty surprising because Olivia Cooke is the lead in this movie, and she's a great actress. Actually, this film has a lot of great actors and actresses in it. Most notably, Lynn Shay, who you might recognize from the Insidious movies or all the way back to the first Nightmare on Elm Street. So she's definitely a horror icon, and it was cool that they got her in here, and she's doing acting circles around the rest of this cast because everyone else in this film just feels like they're reading lines very badly. And like I said, there's a lot of young actors in this who would actually get better at acting, but all of them in this film, yeah, every time they're on scene, they don't portray emotion almost at all. One scene that sticks out in my head, Olivia Cooke's character with, I guess, the principal or the guidance counselor of the school, and just the way she delivers her lines after she slides a pamphlet back across the desk, I was like, oh my god, that's cringeworthy. And it was just awful throughout. No one ever portrayed emotion because this movie is dealing with death and loss. And you would think those are some serious subject matters, but nobody seems to be that sad. Everyone just feels like they're in monotone, kind of just going through their lines. I never felt like any of these people cared about each other throughout this entire film. The actual screenplay does have stuff in there that you would think you would like, and you just don't. So I actually watched the prequel way before I ever saw this. I'm a big fan of the prequel film. Like I said, Mike Flanagan is one of my favorite horror directors working today. He did The Haunting of Hill House, Oculus, Haunting of Bly Manor, Dr. Sleep, so he's one of the best working horror directors today. And in this film, they set up that prequel great, honestly, and you care about the characters that are going to eventually be in the prequel thanks to this film, but this film just doesn't work at all. Now, if you want to watch this film just because you want to see it before the prequel, I actually do recommend that, because watching the prequel first and then watching this, you're kind of like, oh, okay, I remember that from the prequel. If you watch this film and then go right into the prequel, I think you actually would be more rewarded for that, so that's why I'm actually glad to own this. I might actually eventually watch them back to back again. I don't know when, because like I said, I just don't like this movie. I just think it's plain old bad. Like, this movie relies on jump scares like crazy, just little things. Like, there is way too many jump scares in this movie. It doesn't ever build up that sense of dread like a good horror movie would do, because this movie is paced poorly. Like, we would get to a jump scare and then it would slow down again, then we gotta build back up to a jump scare, where really we should be building that dread. And just in general, like the plot of this movie, because a group of friends, their friend dies, and now they want to make contact with her because she had a Ouija board at her house, and they believe that this Ouija board will help them connect to her. But then the Ouija board starts to do some evil stuff, and this house that they live in, that's where these ghosts from the Ouija board live. So all these main characters do not need to go back to this house at all if they choose not to, but they all choose to because it's a horror movie. So this, you know, we always talk about in horror movies how, why don't they just leave? Well, these people don't even have to go in. They could just completely stay away and avoid the whole thing at all circumstances. You know, their friends already passed away. You know, I get wanting to reach out to your dead friend, but you know, in this sense, if you know it's a ghost or a demon of sorts, just stay away. That's all you had to do, but I guess we wouldn't have this movie, which, you know, we would have probably been a little bit luckier if we didn't, in my opinion. If you like this movie, I understand, but it just didn't work for me at all. There was almost nothing for me to really say that I liked about this movie in any sense of the word. I was bored throughout the entire thing. There are some good stuff in the third act, I guess. But like I said, the only thing in this movie that I really think saved it for me from being just an atrocious abomination is Lin Shaye's character, and she also has a big connection to the prequel. So her connection to the prequel is really what drives this movie along for me, is just connecting this film to the prequel. Otherwise, this movie is completely forgettable. It's a generic horror movie from the mid-2010s. There was a reason that nobody was talking about it until now. It's just because it's a flat-out, not good, forgettable horror movie. And I really can't recommend the film at all. But if by chance you're a fan of this film and you want to grab the Scream Factory 4K Blu-ray and you're wondering how good that is, why don't we take a look at that right now. So this 4K of Ouija is coming out on January 10th, 2023, and it is going to be released by Scream Factory. Now, like I said, I'm not too sure why Scream Factory chose this, but they really actually did a surprisingly good job on this. Now, there is no slipcover, which I'm just, with Scream Factory and the releases lately, I'm very confused on packaging, because some of them have slipcovers, some of them don't, some have just the 4K disc, some of them have the 4K and the Blu-ray, some have reversible slipcovers, and then some don't. Well, lucky for you, this film actually does have a reversible slipcover. So this is the original. Slide it out, and there's your reversible slipcover. When you open it up, they actually give you a 4K disc and a Blu-ray disc, and you get individual disc design on that. So the 4K disc and the Blu-ray disc are not generic looking. They're actually really nice looking. They did put some effort into the packaging with this, with the reversible slipcover and the individual disc design. And then when you go in there, the visuals, you have HDR10 and you have Dolby Vision. And this 4K disc actually looked phenomenal. And the Blu-ray disc is just a compressed version of that 4K disc. It's not the old Blu-ray. I compared the 4K and the Blu-ray that came in this packaging. I didn't compare it to the 2017 Blu-ray I believe that came out. I was just comparing the 4K to the Blu-ray that came in here. And the Dolby Vision does do some phenomenal work compared to the Blu-ray, because the 4K was noticeably brighter. The contrast was much better than on the Blu-ray, even though that Blu-ray disc is really nice. So if you were just to get the Blu-ray, which you can't right now, you can only get this version of the Blu-ray in this 4K packaging, so it's just going to come with this. But just by chance you happen to be watching the Blu-ray, it's not a bad Blu-ray. The 4K itself is just better, and that's to be expected with the Dolby Vision on here, which did phenomenal work. Like, this is more of a modern film. It only came out 8 years ago, so it was shot probably with some of the better cameras at the time. And it shows. It's a very good-looking movie. I mean, it's not good-looking in the sense of the cinematography, because the set design, it's very similar to Ouija Origin of Evil, but yet somehow it seems worse in this film. It's got that mid-2010s look to it, which, you've seen in a bunch of horror movies, and it's just very generic. There's nothing that's going to pop off your screen. There's nothing that's really going to draw your eye. The CGI and special effects in this movie are pretty bad. They still look good with this disc, which is phenomenal, because it's a great-looking disc. Scream Factory usually does great jobs on their transfers, and this one is no different. From a visual standpoint, it's a beautiful 4K. Now, the audio is a DTS HD Master Audio 5.1, and that is the same audio that was on the previous disc. So they didn't update the audio track, and the audio track was pretty good. It's very bass heavy. They got to build up to those jump scares, and those jump scares definitely, if you have a nice system, are going to really scare you just because of how loud they get. But that's not really a good thing. They're just trying to shock you. But the audio track does do a good job of building towards that. The bass worked when it needed to work. So it's a pretty good DTS HD 5.1. I could see why they didn't update it. It would have been cool if they did the Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos track on here, that combination. I think it would have been definitely helpful. It just felt a little too low at points, but overall, it's still a very good DTS track. It's just not the best I have ever heard, but it does do a good job. With horror movie mixes, you want to make sure you have plenty of bass in there, and they definitely did. It just felt like at points, it was just a little too low. The dialogue was always clear, though. Never had to worry about that. Whatever you set your volume on, It's definitely good enough. It just felt like it should have been a little louder in points. And that's my only complaint about the audio track. Other than that, it's still pretty good. My complaints are minor. It's not the best, but it's also not the worst. It's just a pretty good, acceptable audio track that I don't think you're going to think twice about while watching this movie. Now, the extras. Now, those are very bland and bare bones. Now, they're promoting a couple new commentary tracks on here if you want to check those out. And one of those are with the writer-director Styles White. So if you want to find out his thought process while making the film, there's a new audio commentary track on here. Other than that, there's a couple little featurettes on here that never go over 5 minutes. Those are on the Blu-ray disc, along with theatrical trailers for this film and Ouija Origin of Evil. So there's a pretty bare bones set of extras on here. Unless you're a fan of commentary tracks, you do get those 2 new audio commentary tracks. So if you are a fan of this film and you want to check those out, those are on the Blu-ray and the 4K. So whichever version of the film you decide to run, you can check those out, but all your extras are going to be on the Blu-ray disc. So those extras for me were very disappointing. But like I said, I'm not a fan of the film, so there was no way I was going to really dive in and want to see a making of documentary of this. So, I wouldn't have watched the extras anyway. The only reason I'm even going to keep this disc is just because I'm a huge fan of the prequel that came out after it. And I do kind of want to watch this again down the line, maybe before I watch the prequel, and just see how they do back to back. Because I didn't have a chance to do that yesterday, but down the line, I think I'll get a chance to finally do that. And maybe I'll like it more the second time going into Ouija Origin of Evil coming right off the original. But after watching it last night, I just didn't like this film at all, and it's really hard for me to recommend the movie in general. But if you are a fan of this film and you are looking to grab the best version of this film possible, I can honestly say with 100% certainty that this 4K is actually a great release. They did a phenomenal job on actually upgrading this, giving it a brand new scan, and bringing this to the 4K format. I still don't understand why they chose the original Ouija. For people who are fans of this, they really did do a good job getting that reversible slipcover, individual disc design, the transfer itself, Adobe Vision and HDR is great. The audio track is acceptable. The extras are not the greatest, so overall I'm going to still give this a 7.5 out of 10. Now, if I was going to include the film in that, it'd probably be like a 3 out of 10, but I'm grading this solely on the fact that the disc itself is really good, the packaging is pretty good, the audio is pretty good, and the extras are very bare bones. But if you're a fan of collecting Scream Factory releases, don't skip this one just because the movie itself isn't great. I can definitely recommend it for the collector out there who wants to just have this in their collection and they're a fan of the prequel and they just collect every single Scream Factory release. I don't think you're going to be disappointed because they definitely didn't half-ass this release. Although I would have liked the slipcover, but that's a very minor complaint. It does seem like there was a lot of effort put into it. I'm just disappointed in the film in general, but Scream Factory had nothing to do with the film, so I can't blame that on them. The work that they were delegated to do, they did a great job with it, and I really can give this a really solid 7.5 out of 10, like I said. And I think that if you are a fan of this film, you'll be pretty happy with this release. Before we get out of here today, we have a little bit of business to take care of in the sense of our digital code giveaway. So for everyone who's new to the channel and you happen to stumble upon the end of this video and you're like, what's a digital code giveaway? What are they doing? Well, we do this every single week. So on Friday's video this past week, it happened to be Black Adam's 4K review. Matt asked you guys 2 questions. He asked you, what is your favorite DC movie or character? And do you think that The Rock should stick to wrestling? Or do you think that The Rock should stick to acting or go back to wrestling? And we actually had a lot of great answers in there. Most people actually said that they would have preferred him as an actor. There was only a couple people that said they preferred the wrestler. And then a lot of people's favorite DC movie came down to, the big ones like The Dark Knight, Man of Steel, Wonder Woman, but there were some surprises in there for me, actually. I saw a couple people say that their favorite DC film was The Dark Knight Rises. Now, that's not my favorite in the Nolan trilogy, but the last time I watched The Dark Knight Rises, and Matt said the same thing, we really enjoyed it. So maybe taking a few years off from the film, it'll let you stop comparing it to Batman Begins or The Dark Knight, and you could just appreciate the film for what it is. And I think that's what a lot of our viewers were doing, and they really leaned into liking The Dark Knight Rises. And I can appreciate that because it is a very well-made movie, and the opening, obviously, with the plane and Bane and Littlefinger from Game of Thrones. I love that opening. I saw that in IMAX, and it's still phenomenal when you watch it at home with the IMAX scenes on that 4K. So I can definitely appreciate people picking The Dark Knight Rises. And without further ado, we're going to spin this magic wheel, and the 2 names it lands on, they have their choice of the digital code that you saw on your screen before you today. And there's some codes in there that we haven't actually put on the screen yet, so if you've paid attention to some of our videos, we might have some of those digital codes that just haven't been added to the list yet. So if you do win, feel free to ask for one of those. So let's spin this magic wheel and see who our 2 winners are. Okay, time for the first wheel spin. Rick Szechuan. All right, Rick, we're going to remove you. All right, time for the second wheel spin. All right, Harry A. All right, congratulations, Rick and Harry. Rick, I'm not 100% sure on this. I know you won a couple weeks ago, and I definitely pronounced your last name wrong. Is your last name Szechuan? Is your name Rick Szechuan? I'm just trying to pronounce it right, because in my head I was thinking about it. Is that how you pronounce it? So, Rick, I'm just hoping I'm pronouncing your last name right. I don't want to butcher it every time you win or I see your name pop up. So, Rick and Harry A, you guys are this week's 2 winners, so this is how it works. Rick has won before. Harry, this is your first time winner. All you gotta do is reach out to us at our Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Those links are in the description below. Just let us know which of the digital codes you want. You have to direct message us, but if you don't want to even reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, you can reach out to us at our email at letstalkentmt@gmail.com. Just let us know which one of the digital codes you want. As long as the other winner didn't pick that first, that digital code is all yours. And for everyone else who didn't win this week, because we got a lot of new names added to the digital code giveaway, we do this every single week. We pick 2 winners every single week. So come back to this Friday's video, whatever that video might be. Me or Matt will ask you 2 questions again. All you have to do is answer one of those questions in the comment section below, and your name will be put back on that wheel. In next Monday's video, we'll spin that wheel again, pick 2 more winners, and we do this every single week. But guys, nothing helps out the channel more than by you liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and telling all your friends.